Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. We're taking your calls at 855-236-3228. That's 855-236-3228. Melissa in Jacksonville, Florida. You're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Melissa.
Hey, Ben. I had a question for you. What are your thoughts with the upcoming election right around the corner? All the looting and rioting taking places, our cities being held hostage, our officers being attacked and assaulted, and President Trump not taking a harder stance, just, we're going to do something, but then he doesn't do anything. And it's getting worse. It's getting way worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think that President Trump's tough talk needs to be translated into tougher action. I mean, he keeps tweeting things out about how he's going to stop what's going on in Seattle, but then he doesn't. And Governor Reagan, right, when Ronald Reagan was governor of California, there was a very well-publicized event when he was governor of California where Berkeley student protesters and rioters took over the offices at Berkeley, and they took over a space at Berkeley, and he literally brought in tanks. I mean, I don't think that Trump has to do that, but the fact that he appears to be sort of either saying nothing and then quietly push policy, or come out there and express that you are going to do something and do something. But it appears weak when you say law and order and then you don't actually do anything, or when you say that we won't allow this in Seattle and then you just don't do anything. Like that. That's not a good look. By the way, right now, if you are a small town, there's never been a better time in history if you're a small town to recruit good police officers. Seriously. Like if I were the mayor of a small town, I would be offering $20,000 bonuses to any major city police officer with a clean record to come and work for me. Because my goodness, I mean, if you're a police officer in a major city, why would you want to work in a major city under the conditions that have now been placed upon you by local government, which is allowing people to run roughshod over police officers, not defending police officers, even in defensible situations? I mean, the right has a campaign platform here, and that is, you know what the precondition to any sort of fun and liberty is? A lawful society. You know what Democrats are willing to allow to happen? They're willing to allow all of this to slip back into chaos, and we've been watching it. How has the Trump campaign not put out an ad just of various Democratic politicians basically poo-pooing the rioting and the looting? How has the Trump campaign not put out material pointing out that Democratic mayors have been allowing this stuff to occur in their cities? Like, that's political malpractice. I am astonished at the level of political malpractice by the Trump campaign. I mean, and it's frustrating because as somebody who's plans on voting for Trump, I do not understand how have they not put out an ad already on COVID that says, here's a giant compendium of all the Democratic governors saying they got what they needed from Trump, right? And then the media just lying about it, right? How is that possible? Like, this is run a campaign, but if you think that you're going to run everything from Twitter, it ain't going to work that way. And as you say, like, I don't think most Americans are on board with the rioting and the looting. I think there's a certain species of woke liberal white women in the suburbs, as reported by the Washington Post, who are trying to convince themselves that rioting and looting are just the expressions of discontent of the oppressed classes. But I don't think that most people deep down believe that, because they want to treat people as individuals, and they believe that no matter how bad things were 400 years ago or 50 years ago, or no matter how bad your home life was, you don't get to just shatter the windows at a Target and walk away with the TV.
Exactly. It's just like there's no accountability, and it's time. We're ready for him to act. His supporters, Trump's supporters, are tired of seeing this. We're ready for him to do something. And he's losing my respect by not acting, by not doing something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's exactly right. I think that's exactly right. I think that people voted for Trump and they backed Trump because they saw him as the stopgap between what the left wants and us, right? I mean, that really is what Trump was. If you ask Trump supporters, they didn't support him because of the tweeting. They didn't support him because he was so brash and bold. They supported him because he was this stolid wall that was going to stand against bad left policy that was destructive to the country. Well, I've never seen a bad left policy as destructive to the country as a week-long shutdown of all major city services because you have to let rioters and looters run rampant. And then the president's big response to that was, I'm going to tweet some stuff. I'm going to say some stuff. Again, this is coming from somebody who is, again, I plan on voting for the man, but I understand why people are disillusioned with the notion that if the wall doesn't hold and it's just a bunch of tweets, then what exactly did Republicans get for the bargain? Like, yes, better than the alternative, but you can't portray yourself as the leader of the strong strength, stand against weakness brigade, and then basically your response amounts to, I'm going to go on TV and I'm going to say mean things about the mayor of Seattle.
Well, the left's always going to bash him, whatever he does or doesn't do. At this point in time, I think he needs to listen to his supporters, the ones that voted him in, and put a stop to all of this. Stop it. And
by the way, if he had said in the middle of the rioting and the looting, if he had said, listen, you guys don't have your cities under control, I'm calling the Insurrection Act. We're going to send in the military. I mean, as Tom Cotton suggested, and we're going to stop this thing dead. It's done. We're not going to allow this kind of rampant looting and destruction. We're not going to allow your mayors to basically sacrifice your rights on behalf of criminality. If he had done that, he would have gotten a lot of blowback in the moment. And then he would have been able to put out a bunch of ads saying, you know who stopped the rioting and the looting in your cities? It was me.
Yeah.
Right? And like politically speaking, put aside the right and wrong of it. Melissa, I appreciate the call. Jonah in Michigan, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Jonah.
Hi, Ben. My question for you, as a 23-year-old pursuing his bachelor's degree, I'm very predominantly conservative. And as things go on, personally, I don't believe in systematic racism. I don't believe in looting. As I move towards universities in Michigan, it's very liberal based. What would your advice be to someone that doesn't want to sacrifice their academic achievements, but doesn't want to give up their moral and beliefs integrity?
Yeah, I've said this to so many students over the years. I have a very large difference of opinion with my good friend Dennis Prager on this. So Dennis Prager is always of the mind you speak up and you speak out and damn the consequences. And I think, Dennis, you went to college in 1970. Like that's not how this thing works. Right now, why you would give a weapon to your political enemies to destroy your career is beyond me. You have to determine for yourself, what is the purpose of each conversation? Is the outcome something that you're looking for, that is possible? Or is it just you venting spleen? Right? You do this every day in your interactions with family. Right? You have family members, you have a disagreement. So, you could say something really harmful to them. You could win the argument, but the cost may be worth more than the benefit. Well, the same thing happens in academia. Mm-hmm. Like, it is just a simple fact of life that people do need to keep their heads down in many cases in the academic world in order to get ahead. And you can rebel against that. You can shout about it, but the predictable consequences of that are quite real. So you have to determine when you can take it, when you can't. You have to determine what your alternatives are. Like, I always encourage everybody to really think through the purpose of what they are doing on a day-to-day level, because that is the way to lead a rewarding life. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't lead a rebellion against that if you think that's something that's likely to succeed, or if you're willing to take the willing to take the loss just to make a point. I sometimes think that's worthwhile. I've done it myself. But I think that people don't think this stuff through. And very often it's like, I'm mad, I'm putting something up on Facebook, and then there's a predictable consequence. Isn't that bad? Yes, it is very bad. Also, you damaged yourself, and that two things can be true. You can be right, and also you could have done something that wasn't particularly useful.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I agree with you on picking and choosing your battles, especially when there's so much on the line. And a lot of people that post on Facebook, they have no reprimand form of consequences or accountability because it's so shareable, it's so common. So I completely agree with you, and I really do appreciate your advice on that.
Yeah, you bet, Jonah. Honestly, I think it's a more livable standard than say what you want whenever you want and then expect the world to conform to your opinions. John in Phoenix, Arizona, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, John.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about what's going on with NASCAR. With their fan base, knowing who attends their races and who watches, buys their merchandise, how do you feel about them taking down the Confederate flag?
How do I feel about NASCAR? I mean, NASCAR is a private organization. I think they can do whatever they want. I think that them buying into the narrative that everybody flying a Confederate flag is a racist is ridiculous. I think that they ought to recognize that a lot of their fans are people who fly the Confederate flag on their trucks as a sign of sympathy for sort of Southern regional pride, having nothing to do with the actual Confederacy and having nothing to do with slavery and racism. I understand as a branding matter why NASCAR wouldn't want a bunch of Confederate flags flying at a time when they're trying to broaden out their constituency. So, let's put it this way. I have less of a problem with NASCAR saying we don't want Confederate flags here than I do with NASCAR saying it's totally fine to kneel for the national anthem. Right? I think those are two very different things. I think that you can say, I think the Confederate flag is alienating to a lot of our fan base. Once you start saying the American flag is very alienating to a lot of our fan base, I think you've gone too far.
That makes a lot of sense. Now that you put it like that, completely agree with you.
I appreciate it, John. Thanks for the call. Riley in Florida, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Riley.
Hey, Ben, how are you? Big fan. Thank you for having me. So my question to you is, I'm actually about to start my career as a law enforcement officer in my small hometown in Florida in a few weeks. And obviously with all this negativity going on towards law enforcement and all this disbanding and defunding of police, I just want to hear your opinion as far as, what steps we actually should take as far as if we're going to defund the police, and what exactly is the left looking to put this money into? Because if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the left were the ones who wanted, to ban guns for citizens and have the police have, higher forces and more numbers. And now all of a sudden they're like, let's disband and reform and get rid of the police.
Yeah, this is exactly right. One of the things that you've been seeing is people lying about how budgeting works. So, for example, in Los Angeles, you'll see them say, well, look at this. 1/3 of the LA budget is focused in on the police, and the other 2/3 are focused in on social services. Why that proportion is way too high? Yes, because when it comes to school and education, 1/3 of the state budget is focused on education. Like, not all sources of money are the same. The city doesn't pay for all the local schools. In LA, LAUSD is not paid for specifically by the LA City Council. It is paid for in part by local property taxes, but it is paid for in large measure by the state of California, right? Failing to acknowledge that there are different sources of money, that the LA City taxes generally pay for the cops, the county and state taxes generally pay for education. That's a mistake that a lot of people are making when they look at the numbers. Like, you actually have to look at the overall amount of money spent on education in your area from all sources versus the amount spent on police. But again, I don't think these are mutually exclusive. The notion that you are going to shift resources from the cops to mental health services, I don't understand why you wouldn't just increase the amount of money you're spending on mental health services. These places are blowing out the taxes anyway. Like, where is all this money going?
Absolutely.
It's going to a bunch of social workers. By the way, the social workers are not solving these problems. Okay, you can increase unemployment benefits. That is not solving the problem of violent crime in these areas. We've had unemployment benefits. We've spent $5 trillion in the war on poverty. It has not solved the problem of vast crime gaps in major American cities between racial groups. Right? Those disparities have not been solved by spending disproportionate amounts of state taxpayer dollars in those areas. Right? The answer here, if you want to solve crime, is you need more cops. Everybody knows it. Joe Biden knows it. I mean, if you ask, Joe Biden has been saying it. Joe Biden was asked about defund the police. He said, well, maybe we actually might need to increase the police. Everybody's ignoring that because they want to pretend that everybody who's pro-police is outside the mainstream. But everybody knows that the police are the line between civilization and anarchy. We saw that over the past week. And if I were, as I said before, if I were running a local area, if I were mayor of a local area, I would be offering bonuses to good police officers to move to my area and work there. I'd make my town the safest town that I could. And I'm bewildered by the idea that you're going to make the town safer by defunding the cops. I mean, by the way, the idea that mental illness workers should be first line of defense when it comes to, there's a homeless guy in the street talking to himself. I don't disagree with that. I get that. But the idea that you're going to call a mental health worker when that guy on the street who's talking to himself is also running around with a knife is insane. Right? I mean, that's not the same situation.
Yeah. No, exactly, of course. And yeah, I agree with you as far as the small towns, increasing the pay. I work in a small town that is upper middle class town, and they have been upping the pay and increasing the salaries because, again, it is a dangerous job. Officers are putting their lives on the line every single day, and really don't get a lot of respect for it. And I believe the amount of pay that was around here was substantial to what it should have been, and they're moving it up, which I appreciate. And it's not just that, going into law enforcement is obviously something that's very difficult nowadays. And, of course, I have people that attack me for it all the time, but you know what, like, I stay proud about it. I hope all my brothers and sisters in blue stay positive towards it, and, we'll get through this situation in a positive light. At least I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, that would certainly be nice because this is a really, really negative situation. And again, people castigating police are the first people to call cops the minute something goes wrong. The same people, the cops are all that Berkeley School of Music banning their toilets to the cops. Guess who Berkeley's going to call the minute their front window gets smashed? They're not going to be calling the tuba players.
Exactly.
That's it. It's absurd.
Of course.
All righty. Appreciate the call, Riley. We're going to take more of your calls in one moment at 855-236-3228. That's 855-236-3228. You're listening to The Ben Shapiro Show.